Hey everyone, and welcome to episode of a quick series we'll be doing. It's the Weekend Projects powered by Radio Shack. So we'll be bringing you 10 episodes where we'll be talking with Make Magazine editors and some of the authors about projects that you guys could do over the course of the weekend. So today we are here talking to Tom Rogers, the Make contributing author, and Mike Sinisi, the executive editor of Make Magazine, and we'll be doing a hangout. Yes, we follow along, just talking about the TV Go Sleep project that Tom, you wrote and created, and just asking you some questions about being a maker. So let's dive into it. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in being a maker, and what are some projects that you're currently working on?
Well, I've been sort of noodling around with electronics and mechanical things kind of my entire life. You know, I'm the original kid who took apart his father's watch and couldn't put it back together. And I guess it was, well, I guess, what, 6 years ago now, when Make first started coming out, a friend of mine signed me up. In fact, I like to brag that I subscribed to Make before it was ever published.
I saw that in your bio in the magazine, yeah, so you were before it ever came out. Awesome.
That's right. It was given me as a gift even before they became available, so I've been in on the ground floor, and as soon as I read the first issue, I thought, I've got to get myself into this somehow. And so a few years back, a year or so after I got the first issue, I came up with an idea for a remote control camera, which I'd actually been noodling around with for a while, and had finally decided I was going to go ahead and put it together and package it up nicely and see if I could get it published. And thankfully, you all picked it up, and that was a great accomplishment for me. I got to tell you, it was like one of my life goals. And then a few years ago, I had this idea for the universal sleep timer, the TV Go to Sleep, and I thought, well, sounds like something that they might be interested in. It's a little challenging enough to be sort of worth writing about, but easy enough that a beginner could probably knock it out in a long weekend. And so I thought I'd float it, and you guys picked that one up too.
Awesome. And so some of your background, Tom, is an educator and a physics teacher for high schoolers. How does that kind of play into it, and what's sort of your theory behind making and education and kind of bringing the two together?
Well, I tell you what, the nice thing about being a maker and having a sort of a hands-on sense of things is when I have a question from one of my students about a physical principle or a physical concept, I find that I can usually kind of go to the back shelf and pull down something that I've either have already built or can whip up something quickly to demonstrate some principle or another, maybe a counterexample to show that something doesn't work, or in some cases, you know, a sort of a one-of-a-kind build to demonstrate a principle that you know, there's no catalog part number for the thing I want. But
like a quick prototype or something like that.
What's that?
Like a quick prototype, or just
exactly. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that, you know, my experience making things with my hands has really been helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So, Mike, we also have the project TV Go Sleep. It's actually found in Make 35, and you have an example of it, I believe, with you. And Tom, you want to talk about the project, sort of what it does for those who are not familiar with the project already, and
sure.
How did you come up with the idea? You were traveling long hours and in a hotel and couldn't turn off the TV when you went to sleep, or?
That's right. That's right. I travel by car a lot. Being a teacher, I have summers off and I do a lot of road tripping.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find is I'll often get really tired and feel like I can't drive safely anymore. But then I pull off and get into a hotel room and I can't fall asleep. So I'll turn on the TV to kind of help me zone out. And then a lot of hotel rooms, especially the cheap beside the interstate hotel motels, the TVs don't have a sleep time. And so I'll be awakened by the noise of the TV at 3 in the morning when some infomercial comes on. So I thought, what I really need is something that I can carry with me that'll turn all these TVs off half an hour after I've fallen asleep. And that's when I thought, well, I know that the TV Be Gone code exists.
Mm-hmm.
It should be very hard to mount that code on an Arduino, build in some sort of a countdown timing circuit, and attach some LEDs, and that's where the idea came from.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Very smart. I love that.
So, Mike, do you want to show, do we have a TV kind of set up that we can show the proof of concept, and then we'll kind of go into maybe some build notes?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. So for everyone that's watching, this is Tom's creation. You can see it's got an on-off switch on the back. We've got the activation button on the front, a little indicator of what channel and what phase you are with the device. And then on the very front end of it here, we've got the three LEDs that broadcast the signal to turn the TV off. Now, right behind me, peek over my shoulder, you can see we've actually have our TV set up. It's turned on. We've got we've got the snow.
Right.
Is maybe actually the thing you do want to fall asleep to. So let me just tilt this here. So right here, I've got the TV go sleep. Place this right here, and let me just trigger the button. It's going to run through a number of the different signals,
Awesome.
and boom, snaps it off. What's fun though is that if you wanted to, I don't know if you've ever done this, Tom, but you could actually have it set up to turn the TV back on.
Be a good wake-up call, right? If you're in the remote zone. Turn on those infomercials and get you out of bed.
So, yeah, there it is.
There it goes. So it turns back on. So, Tom, there's a couple different modes. Is that right? You can actually have it run through a sequence to make sure it'll actually turn off your TV. And then once you've verified that the codes are actually pre-programmed in that Arduino library, you can then set a timer. So how does the timer circuit work? You know, you start with an Arduino, right? The Uno. And how do you get that timing sequence to work with the LEDs in the libraries?
Got it. Well, it's interesting because one of my concerns was I wanted something that would not eat up a lot of battery power.
Okay.
Battery life, because most devices that I build are either going to be hardwired and just on all the time, or you're going to turn them on, use them for whatever you're doing for the moment, and then turn them off when you're done. And the realization struck me that this thing is going to be on all night long. I mean, you're going to set the power switch to the on position, and then presumably you're going to fall asleep, and the thing's going to be on until you get up in the morning and turn it back off. And I thought, you know, I can't have the thing running at full power for 8 hours. It won't last.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was I looked into how to put the Arduino into a temporary sleep, and the Arduino, the chip, the actual microchip has a number of different sleep modes, and one of them is it will just sort of shut off, go into this really quiescent mode where all it's doing is counting clock ticks for a certain amount of time, and then when the right number of clicks has expired, it wakes up and checks to see if there's any code to process, and then can be put back to sleep. And so the way the TV Be Gone program works, when you first turn it on, it assumes you want 90 minutes of TV watching. And that's an approximate value, because what it's actually going to do is, if you don't change the amount of time before, I think you've got like a 30-second window there, before it goes into timing mode. And then what actually happens is the Arduino goes to sleep, and it sleeps for about 8 seconds, as I recall, and then it wakes up and checks and increments a counter, checks to see if the counter has counted high enough, and if it hasn't, it goes back to sleep again. And it doesn't sleep for very long, but the thing is, it's asleep for, and I can't remember if it's 8 seconds or not, and then it's awake for like 5 milliseconds while it goes through those 3 or 4 processing steps, and then it's back to sleep. So for all practical purposes, the thing's off while it's waiting for the timer to run out. The LEDs have all turned off, and the Arduino is just quietly counting to itself. Then it wakes up, increments the counter. If enough counts have elapsed that it figures you've fallen asleep, then it executes, runs through all of the off codes in the TV Be Gone library, and then it goes to sleep for the rest of the night.
Okay, and so could you just use normal, like if I've got a bin of LEDs, could I use any LEDs, or are these special LEDs for the special circuit you put together?
They have to be infrared LEDs to control the television.
Okay.
So, essentially any infrared controller will work. It's not like if any of the viewers are familiar with like RC cars, where you have to be really careful to make sure you've got the right frequency paired with the receiver. Infrared is infrared. Pretty much any infrared transmitter is going to be picked up by the infrared receiver on the television.
Okay.
The all of the infrared devices are sort of waiting for their cue and ignoring all of the signals that don't apply to them. So if you use your remote control to turn off your stereo, it won't turn off your television, not because it's on a different frequency, but just because it's sending a different code. And that's how the TV Be Gone eventually, or TV Go to Sleep in this case, is able to turn off everything, because it just cycles through all the known codes for off in every infrared language, or every infrared transmitter receiver pair.
So it just goes through a list and tries every combination that it has in the Arduino library. And then if the Arduino code doesn't have the TV sequence for your specific TV, is there a way to figure that out? Is there a way to update the code and try new sequences?
There are, I have not been doing this, but there are people who are sort of trying to keep the TV Be Gone library up to date. And since the TV Go to Sleep runs from that same library, conceivably, 2 or 3 years from now, there'll be a half a dozen new TVs with new off codes, and they'll be in that library. And all you'll need to do is reload that library into the same directory where the TV Go to Sleep code is, and reinstall it on the Arduino, and then you'll be up to speed on the new library.
That's great.
Okay, so besides the special LEDs, here's kind of like the insides from the project. You use a perf board that kind of mounts onto the Arduino, kind of like a shield. You made your own shield. Anything special, or maybe some pitfalls to watch against when making the circuit? I know some kind of detailed soldering, so if you're new to soldering, it's a good challenge for sure.
Yes, I would say that's probably the most difficult part of the project, is trying to get those pins aligned properly and solder the leads without shorting them together.
Okay.
One thing I found was very helpful, and there are pictures of this in the magazine and on the website for the build. If you stick your header pins in a project board, a breadboard, that'll hold them nice and straight, and then you can put your perf board on top of that and solder onto the backside. And the key is to use a very hot soldering iron and just as little solder as you can to get a good electrical connection. You need to be careful not to melt a big blob on there, because it'll run over and touch the lead next to it, and then you have to break out your soldering tool.
Okay. And then it uses also the 8-segment or the 7-segment LED display. Was that just for choice, or you just like using those components? I see them in projects every now and then. They use up quite a bit of I/O pins, usually at least, and that's the counter that you use, obviously, to show the timing sequence. So.
Well, I added that just to sort of give the project a finished feel.
Okay.
To tell you the truth, when I actually use it, I almost always just flip it on and leave it for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're the kind of person that falls asleep quickly and then the TV tends to wake you back up after only half an hour or an hour, you could decide that you wanted to set it for a shorter time. And originally I thought I would just use LED indicators, maybe drill a hole through the lid, stick a little LED through, and have a piece of paper next to it, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be using up all those leads, and I'm not doing anything else with all the output pins on the Arduino anyway, they're driving the IR, the infrared LEDs, and but that only takes one pin, because all 3 LEDs are wired together, daisy-chained in series. I have all those other outputs left on the Arduino. I thought, well, instead of driving individual LEDs, wouldn't it be fun to drive a little display with the actual numerical value of the number of minutes you want the delay for? So I went ahead and put that together, and that was fun. I'd never used a display like that. I'd certainly used LEDs and used them as sort of special purpose indicators, but I'd never used a character display that way. That was fun to figure out.
So, okay, so back to the character display then. I noticed when you hit the button and you're trying to go through the test sequence to make sure if it'll actually turn off your TV or not, some kind of cryptic characters kind of flash across the screen. Is there like a random number generator making these signals, or what is it trying to talk to me somehow?
Let me show this to everyone as you're explaining
let's watch it. See if people can figure out what it is before I say.
I was trying to figure out these alien, symbols.
That's 8. You got to hold it for a second to start.
Hold on.
Yes. There it goes.
So now it runs through its sequence, and it's trying to turn off the TV.
It says testing, Testing.
With like a.
It's hard to make a T with 7 segments.
Yeah, you did a pretty good job, though.
I can see it.
Once you know it's there, you can read it.
Yeah.
It's a one character scrolling display is what it is.
Yeah, very cool. And it's also nice, I find too when I'm working on projects, if you have a couple extra I/O pins on the Arduino or your microcontroller that allow you to add some kind of functionality that maybe the project didn't need, but it sort of adds a new flair to it. It's a great way to experiment and try to figure out how to use a new component. And then the next project, you keep on using that same component, or you add some more complexity to it. So, did this start out just as a breadboard and an Arduino and some IR LEDs, or did you just right away put it into a box and use it the next night to help you sleep? What was the process?
The very first one of these I built I didn't even have a breadboard. I downloaded the TVB Gone code to my Arduino,
Okay.
and I grabbed an IR pin and jammed it just right into the pinouts on the Arduino,
Yeah.
and pointed it at the TV, and sure enough, the TV went off. I thought, hey, cool, I was off to the races after that. And one of my earliest working prototypes actually did have the 7-segment display. I never really, as I say, my original plan was individual discrete LEDs for the various time options, and then as soon as I realized I was going to be wiring up 5 or 6 different LEDs, I thought, well, let's go to a display and see how that works.
Yeah.
And I actually have here, if I can get this to come up on my view, I've got a picture of the very first one that I built and used.
Okay. Kind of like the.
You should see it there now.
There you go. That's not even like an Arduino. It's like the chip by itself.
That's right. That's right. A few years ago, I bought an Arduini kit,
Okay.
which is sort of the most stripped-down version of the Arduino platform. And after I built that, I realized, this is just a chip with a capacitor and a resistor.
Mm-hmm.
I could just build it off of that. And so that's the AT-Mega chip,
Okay.
just right there as is. And then I thought as a make project to kind of share with some people who might not have as much experience, and particularly if we wanted a project that somebody who was new could put together in just a couple of days, I thought, well, let's start with the Arduino base, and which led me to, as you described it, sort of a build your own shield, which is something I hadn't tried before either. That was a fun little challenge, trying to figure out how to come up with a nice, clean interface with the pinout of the Arduino.
And Mike, that's a great point. These projects are meant to be sort of done on the weekend by beginners. I mean, that's why we're doing this whole series. Is we just want accessible projects that are fun and have a great thing to teach you, whether it's the 7-segment display or it's how to interface the Arduino with the IR sensors or how to use the libraries. Can you talk more about just kind of what else we could maybe expect?
Yeah, there's been some really fun things. One of the things I really actually have enjoyed about the Weekend Projects program is that a number of these have come from people like Tom, who have come up with brilliant ideas, figured out a way to make them work, and wanted to share them with everyone. Some of them we're doing internally in-house, but the overall idea of them this is stuff that people have shared with us. So the TV Go Sleep is, I think this one's really fun. It's really clever. The sing-along song devocalizer is another one that's been a really fantastic project because it helps show how vocals can be stripped out of music using a really simple circuitry. It's actually one of the more simple circuits that we have in the whole build here. Today, I believe we launched the Critter Cam Capture project.
Yeah, I saw that in the office. It looks really neat too.
Yeah, another really exciting one. But altogether, the thing that I've really enjoyed the most is the ingenuity and creativity, and people figuring out, how do you build your own Arduino shield? How do you wire up a 7-segment sensor so that you can have some feedback when you're working on a project like this? And then also the creativity to put the 3 different LEDs right in here. Set out at a different angle, so you make sure that you don't have to have a pinpoint position of your of your component here. You can spread the room with that turn-off code. Yeah, this it's really been a lot of fun seeing these things come through. And Tom, I think this one's really been great.
Thanks.
Well, Tom, what else could we expect to see from you? Any new articles coming out, or some just projects you're working on right now? I know you're got some cool stuff in the background.
Yeah, well, one of the things you see here behind me, you may notice I have a 3D printer, which I actually put together over the summer. and have just started tinkering around with the calibration on. Unfortunately, as a school teacher, it's great. I have a lot of free time in the summer. Once the school year starts, I'm afraid my time for making kind of grinds to a halt.
Yeah, he gets slammed.
Exactly. I do have one project that I've been sort of trying to get fit in around the edges because I'm hoping to use it in my classroom, and that is a device that I can wear on my wrist that will help me keep track of students' class participation.
Okay.
There's a technique that teachers use, and if there are any teachers out there, they'll recognize immediately what I'm talking about when I say popsicle sticks. Take popsicle sticks and write the names on all their students on popsicle sticks and kind of rattle them around in a cup and draw from the cup, because it's very easy for a teacher to sort of get into the habit of always looking in the same spot in the room, and if the kid who's sitting in that spot likes to answer questions and that's the first place you look, before you know it, it's just you're having a conversation with that one kid.
Yeah.
And so we have all these sort of little tricks to try to force ourselves to get everybody in the room to participate, and I thought, I have seen apps for that on a cell phone, but I don't really want to stand up at the front of my classroom with a cell phone in my hand. I feel like cell phones can sometimes, for all that they're great for connecting with people who aren't around, they really kind of separate you from people in the room with you. So I was thinking if I could get something that had that same functionality but was just that and had a kind of a more streamlined form factor that didn't take up my hand. So I'm trying to put together a little gizmo I can wear on my wrist that will display a randomly selected student's name and then give me a way of recording whether or not the student answered that question well, and then it'll log that to a data file which I can then download to my grade book and make that a graded part of the class participation.
That's awesome. Incredible. So do you have an electronic grade book?
Yes, I've been using electronic gradebook almost since the beginning of my teaching career, mostly just because it makes the number crunching very easy at the end of the grading period. And these days, the school where I teach, Cape Henry Collegiate School here in Virginia Beach, they have an online gradebook, so the students and their parents can track their performance almost in real time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, very cool. So what form factor will this arm-mounted device take?
Well, the idea is it'll be a little bit larger than a wristwatch, and it will have a small LCD display, which will display the name of the student. And I'm thinking a 2-line LCD, so across the bottom I can have some menu prompts, and then below the menu prompts some buttons. And the thinking with the prompts is that, for example, the first time a student's name is called, maybe I have a button there for taking attendance. And then if a student is absent, then their name is taken off of the list, so I won't be prompted to call on them that period. And then once the question and answer period of the lesson begins, the student's name, randomly selected student name, can come up, and then I can indicate whether the student had an adequate answer or a great answer. And then if it was a great answer, maybe the kid's name goes to the bottom of the stack, and maybe if the answer wasn't as strong as it could have been, the kid's name comes up a little sooner than later, and it could keep a kind of a weighted random number generator so that everybody gets called on, but the students who need the most interaction are getting called on a little more frequently as the class period goes on.
I love it. This is funny because it's
awesome project, ambitious.
Yeah, a science teacher who's actually building his own technology for the betterment of the classroom. That's
yeah, why not build new hardware, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Cool. Well, I think I'd like to take this time and thank our guest, Tom Rogers, again. You can find the project, TV Go to Sleep, in Make 35. We'll also have a link either where this video is posted, or we'll come back and put an overlay over the YouTube video. And then Mike Sinisi, the executive editor for Make Magazine. Again, my name is Nick Raymond. We'll be doing 9 more of these weekend project hangouts sponsored by Radio Shack, and we hope to see you there. So thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nick. Here we go. Powering down.